Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the deluge of content that has been hitting World of Warcraft, especially in patch 11.1, especially 11.1.5, and between 11.2, in this very short overall time frame. I'm not somebody who does a lot of negative videos or even critiquing videos. I'm usually covering stuff or doing guides on stuff and whatnot. But I actually came to the idea of doing this video because I was actually just trying to name everything that was going on. And I missed like two or three things because there was just too much stuff. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm not going to be hyper negative about the content itself because a lot of the content I actually enjoy. So this isn't about to crap on the content or say bad stuff about the content itself necessarily. There's a couple things that maybe I'll critique a little bit, but a lot of the content has been fine. It's just been too much all at once or in a very short time period, and then that makes the idea of a couple of the things not being as good mean, well, maybe you could have cooked that a little bit longer, put it out at a different time, and maybe it had been better. So, it's not going to be a hyper negative video about the game, but it's just going to be hopefully some positive feedback, about having too much content, too much stuff to do if you're somebody who plays beyond, the beginning of a season or whatever. So let me go through first and mention all the things that I'm talking about here. So these are just all the things that I came up with. Maybe I'm even missing some, but this is plenty to make my point. So we had the Horrific Visions Revisited. We had Charged Delves, and then also the belt that came with that, right? That's like a power gain content as well. We had Dastardly Duos, that's where I'm outside of right now. We have Lore Walking, which I feel like went completely under the radar for the most part. We have Turbulent Timeways, this is a recurring event. We have the Greedy Emissary, we have the Collector's Bounty, we had the Turbo Boost. And then the last thing I have written down was the Arathi storyline stuff that came out as well, which is, in my opinion, very needed content, even if it's just storyline and stuff like that. Not, maybe not exactly like the other types of content I'm mentioning, but still content and something to do and important to a lot of the player base, whether you liked it or didn't like it. So let's go through each thing first and kind of talk about, like, is this necessary? Is it good? Is it too much? Could you have fit it in somewhere else? Okay. And let's start with a huge W first. Let's start with the Horrific Visions Revisited. So a lot of the higher end community, which a lot of times I'm talking in my videos to more higher end players, but not always. And I try to be all inclusive when I'm doing like paladin stuff and whatnot. And the Horrific Visions Revisited, we're not like beloved by the higher end people. A lot of them are like, oh, I have to do this thing to get this helm enchant or whatever. But what I will say is I had a lot of fun personally doing the Horrific Visions Revisited, doing all the achievements, doing guides for those, doing stuff like that. I had a lot of fun personally. And what I noticed is that a lot of players were taking part in the Horrific Visions Revisited and having a lot of fun doing it and doing it on their own pace at their own time. There were people getting the achievements and getting everything done the same time as me, like doing it at a very high level. Then there were people getting it a couple weeks later than that, even 4 weeks later than that, as they got everything unlocked, as they got better at it, they got a perfect run, whatever the case may be. And I thought that was really cool. And in my opinion, I would assume based on Blizzard's data that they're going to do something like this again. Horrific Visions, the solo, almost like speed running / strategy content. This is also the birth of this was the Deaths of Chromie. I always speak about this because it was one of the first guides I ever made, like an in-depth guide, was Deaths of Chromie. This is when I was very new. It was a very good video for how terrible I was at making videos. Not that I'm the best ever now, but I was so bad back then. But it was pretty good overall for that. And it was one of the first things I did, and it was really fun to do. And that was kind of the beginning of this Horrific Visions thing. And I think they really have something here, and I would love to see them continue it. And based on how much people enjoyed just revisiting the old ones, it's not even new content. I would expect this to be something that is revisited. No, pardon the pun. And this was a huge W. This was great, right? But this is something that can take certain plays. So for me, maybe it only took a couple weeks to get everything done. For other players, it took 4, 6, 7 weeks to get done, whatever, right? If they wanted to get everything. And so that's something to keep in mind. This is a big content thing. The Horrific Visions Revisited. It really was, and it was successful. We also then have the charged delves. So charged delves. This is another W overall. Why is this good? Well, the belt thing, I can, take it or leave it on the power belt thing that we have on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you have this belt that you can have on that gives you like a special power. The charged delves, though, themselves are pretty cool because what it basically offers was another difficulty to the bountiful delves with more rewards, more stuff to gain from doing them, and a huge, just like Heroic Visions Revisited was hugely popular among the broader WoW player base. Delves, while they might not be the most exciting thing to the highest end community, they are extremely popular. So this is a way to boost up to another level if you want to. It's completely by choice. Like, okay, I'm going to go into this charged delve. It's going to be hard. I'm going to do my best. That kind of thing for maybe a more casual player. And it's great. I like the idea of it. But again, when you tie it to this belt, then it's like, okay, well, now I have to do this charged delves and I have to interact with the system. Now, charged delves is great. The idea of adding other difficulties to the delves is fine. Optional difficulties, that's fine. I'm all for that. More rewards for delve players, I'm fine with that. You have to put this in somewhere. I would just argue that maybe this wasn't the best place to put this content when all this other stuff was going on. Maybe there was more of a dead time that you could have put this content in. And you didn't have to tie it to a belt or anything either. There's plenty of people doing delves. I think they would like to do it anyways. Dastardly Duo. So this is the first one that's going to be a little bit of a flop. Now, however, I do think it is a good idea. Now, I don't even bother doing the quests. I had very little fun doing it. This was not very well made for melee at all, especially if you're doing this solo. It just wasn't made great for melee. That's just the reality of it if you're someone who's trying to get like the highest possible scores and stuff like that. But it is a really cool idea. Could have been like a newer take on the Brawlers Guild, which, again, just bring that back. That was amazing, right? A boss rush where you're just killing stuff as fast as you can, doing objectives as fast as you can. The idea of making it like a pinball game, which is what the dev said. I think that's a great idea. A lot of it was a great idea, but it wasn't executed enough. This is something that I would argue maybe it could have cooked a little longer. Maybe we didn't need to have this right now because it could have cooked a little longer. Because there's so much other stuff to do in the game right now, I'm not even bothering doing it at this point because it's also not fun for me. So when it's not fun and there's other stuff to do that I would like to do, then it just goes to the back burner. I'm not even really participating in it anymore because it just did not hit the mark. This is something that could have cooked longer and probably been pretty cool. I would hate to see them scrap it or people hating on the devs who made it or whatever, because I see the vision. It just needs a little bit more marinating, a little bit longer. Make something like this better again. Maybe make it a hybrid of this plus the Brawlers Guild. There's something here to it, but this particular one didn't hit for me. We also have the lore walking thing. So lore walking was with Cho or whatever. That's actually a pretty cool thing. It tells story, especially for a lot of the player base now, believe it or not, has started in MOP or After, or even Legion or After is a big part of the player base now. A lot of the old heads have either went back to Classic or just don't play video games or don't play World of Warcraft anymore, and that's fine. Now, there's still a lot of us. I'm one of those old heads, I guess you'd say. But the lore walking thing is great. It's well done. I've only gotten to do one of them so far, though, because I was doing all this other stuff on top of doing the raid and trying to do stuff on the PTR. Now that's my own problem, my own things there. You don't have to play the PTR. But I still need to do 2 of the lore walking things. I had fun doing the one that I got done, and there's 2 more to do. And I think these are something that, again, you should put more of these in the game eventually to tell more stories of characters, especially side characters that people might not know a lot about. It can be very important to do that. I could probably do a whole video about and giving suggestions of characters that players might need to know more about than what they currently know. So the lore walking is great. Again, maybe there was a better time to put the lore walking in. I'm not sure. Maybe lore walking could have been put in with 11.1, right? At the beginning of 11.1 even, or in the like halfway between 11.1 and 11.1.5. It almost feels like too much. Now, in this case, like, I'm pretty sure it's going to still be there, and I'm not going to just miss out on it if I don't get it done. I hope that's the case at least. So at least I'm not like time pressured to get this done. But again, it's just another thing, and it's another good piece of content. But it just is a, it's just kind of pushed in with all this other stuff going on. And it also takes some shine away from it. Think about it. Lore walking could have been really cool maybe if it kind of had its own stage to set on and it was done well, which I've only done one of them so far, but I thought it was done pretty well. I already know the stories as well. I did the Lich King one first and I already know that story, so I'm not learning anything there. Another one we had was Turbulent Timeways. So this is just a recurring event. This could have just been on the schedule or whatever, right? The only pointed thing about doing it was getting this mount, which is a really cool mount, by the way. I've already kind of highlighted how cool and how much I really enjoy this mount. And I'm not even somebody who loves mounts that much, but this mount is from the Turbulent Timeways. You can either it can drop at the end of the dungeon, or you could do the time walking dungeons each week with the buff and get the achievement and then get the mount that way. That's another way to get it. And this is a great piece of content. It's something else you need to do though. You need to do those time walking dungeons. This could have just been where it landed on the schedule, to be completely fair, with the Turbulent Timeways. But again, it's another thing you got. Why I got to do 4 time walking dungeons or whatever to get the buff. Maybe you didn't have it drop at the end of your dungeon like I did. So that's just another thing, right? Next up, we have the Greedy Emissary. Again, maybe this is just where it falls on the schedule. This one is not super important, and it's very easy and quick to do. So, like, this is a very low impact is what I would call it. So I'd call Horrific Visions a high impact. It takes a little bit of time, even for a top-end player, to get everything done in Horrific Visions. Time-consuming, have to put a little effort into it. Greedy Emissary, very low impact, right? This isn't a huge deal. It's just another thing, but it's a low thing. Again, maybe it would get more shine if it had a little bit of its own stage, but again, maybe that's just a schedule thing. The Collector's Bounty. So we're not going to debate the merits of Collector's Bounty. There's a whole debate about it, because basically Collector's Bounty is we're going to get an increased drop chance on old mounts and old transmog for a limited time to maybe try to farm those things. Basically, mostly presented it as a way for new players to have a chance to feel more inclined to go back into the old content, which I think is a really cool idea, by the way. If you started after Legion and you never went and farmed Ashes of Alar, well, maybe now that could be a cool thing to go back and do, mixed in with the lore walking, right? These things can be cool to put together there. And so I like the idea of it. And we're not going to talk about the merits of it here, whether we should, not allow things to be farmed easier or whatever in this particular video. But again, I think this is kind of a cool thing. But again, where are people going to have time to go back and farm these things if they're trying to do all this other stuff? Now, granted, this as I'm making this video, this actually is going to come out today, basically, when this video goes live. So this isn't something that's already out, but again, it's just another thing to do before 11.2. We also had the turbo boost, so we're still not done yet. We had the turbo boost. Now, this was a huge win. Everybody loved the turbo boost. You could literally see the spike in participation in Mythic Plus and stuff like that when the turbo boost came out. Everybody was playing. It was like the beginning of a patch, basically. What turbo boost shows is when you give away to eye level go up, everyone plays and everyone has fun. Everyone was having fun even, which is crazy. Like, everyone's like, yeah, let's get all this gear up. Oh, look at my eye level now. I'm so good. And it was fun and it was cool for that week or two. For a high-end player, the turbo boost really was like a week or two event, right? And it was really cool. It was a huge W. This kind of like coincided with the Horrific Visions, though. Again, this could have been even cooler on its own. Now, it did come out a little bit before Horrific Visions, so Turbo Boost, I do think, got to have that shine on it that it deserved. But again, it was really close to Horrific Visions coming out too, which was another huge W. So it's like, ugh. In one way, you're like, well, we're stacking W's, but at the same time, each individual thing's not getting its chance to shine. It's kind of like what I'm getting at with this, because as you can see, I'm mostly positive on this content. And then lastly, the last thing that I thought of to mention here was the Arathi storyline that came out. Again, we're not going to talk about the merits of it. Some people hated that storyline. Some people enjoyed it. Some people were both. They liked parts of it, didn't like other parts of it. Like most things, there's people everywhere on it. And this is something you absolutely have to do, right? So in my opinion, you should have storyline stuff with each patch. You can have storyline stuff come out even without a patch. Storyline is important to the game. I think they're trying really hard to make the storyline better in World of Warcraft. I'm not a huge lore. I'm not the lore walker. I'm not Cho. I'm not one of these guys who does lore videos on World of Warcraft, which that's kind of like a dying breed because the story hadn't been that great for a long time. You know, I'm not novel either or whatever, right? But I do think it's important to tell the story, and hopefully they start telling better and better stories as they go. I think overall, I mean, I like the ethereal stuff. I like kind of like where we're headed, but again, I don't know how it's actually going to play out. I mean, I think each patch you should do the storyline stuff. So I don't think this is something you can get rid of. But again, let's say the Arathi storyline was like the best storyline ever. It would be completely under the radar overall. Just compared to all the other stuff that there is to do. Very similar to the lore walking. Even if the lore walking was perfect, like A plus levels, which I don't know if it's A plus levels, but let's say it was, you know, it'd be completely overshadowed. And there's just, like I said, it's too much stuff. So what do you do in this case, right? Like, what do you do with this? All I just went through everything that I could think of. And what do you do with this? Well, for Dastardly duos, I think that's in the case of one that needed to cook longer. And if Dastardly Duos was a huge success, then that would even more overshadow the lore walking. It would even more overshadow the Arathi storyline. If it was successful, other things would then get even more put to the back burners. And so it's like, what was the goal with it, right? What was the goal with the Dastardly Duos? So it's like, so if it's really great, then it's going to make other things that we put out less, you know, poignant. And if it's really bad, then people are going to hate on it or whatever. It's like, so what was the point of putting it out when we did? I think that can be something really important. And sometimes less is more if the less is good. That doesn't mean I'm not somebody who's sitting here, because there's people who play WoW, you know, a lot of hours every day. And, you know, in a different world, I would too. Like, I'm not hating on that at all. But it's just the idea that, you know, a lot of us don't play that much and we can't keep up with everything. And it's not to say that there shouldn't be, I don't need to be able to do every piece of content that comes out, but it also, as someone, this is my main game though. I do play a lot of hours a week. It's not like I play like a little bit. It's not like I don't even just raid log. Like a lot of higher end players at this point, they'll just raid log, right? I do other stuff. You know, I was leveling other characters. You know, I play with my son sometimes, and I do very casual things. And you know, I just think overall you should just kind of like have a goal and like let things kind of shine a little bit. During the anniversary event, they brought back the secret finding stuff, right? I don't think that they hype that up enough. First of all, it's a very popular thing. The secret finding community itself is very large. Hype up the secret finding stuff and let that, when you do that once a year or whatever, do a secret finding thing, hype it up and let it shine on its own stage a little bit. I did think it had its own stage at least. That was good. But like let it shine and think about that with the other content as well. Horrific Visions, a very popular thing. If you make a new Horrific Visions and just trust that you make it well, I guess, let it shine on its own. Let it breathe a little bit. Let people enjoy it. Maybe have a stretch goal in it that takes even the best players 4 weeks to get done. It's fine because it's a very popular thing among the broader community. And I think all that stuff should be taken into account. You should also take into account that if Greedy Emissary and Turbulent Timeways were just scheduled here, take that into account when you release other things. Okay, well, there's nothing scheduled at all in, you know, let's say August, or well, August will probably be the patch, so that's a bad example. But maybe there's like nothing scheduled in July, so maybe you could have put it into July or start it in July or something like that. Which, you know, we are in July now, but maybe the end of July, whatever, right? Think about that stuff a little bit more. Obviously, there could just even be more content coming. It's not a bad thing that you're trying to give us more. My message to Blizzard would be this. It's not a bad thing that you're trying to give us more content. And a lot of the content is actually pretty good. It's just like, there's also been times throughout this expansion where it has been a little bit more dead and there wasn't as much to do. And so it's like you could definitely pace things out better than what you are, and also let the bigger, more impressive features breathe a little bit. Let Horrific Visions breathe. If and when you do a secret finding event, let that breathe, and also hype that up more. First of all, that needs hyped up more so to the broader community, because it's very popular, but it's very popular in the secret finding community, which just happens to be a very large community. So that would be my message to Blizzard. I'm not hating on the content itself. Basically, Dastardly Duels was the only one that I'm not really enjoying. And I think the idea was fine. It just wasn't implemented well. And it certainly didn't have room to breathe, even if it was implemented well. So that will be it for this one. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a lot. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.